Okay, welcome back to Year One Podcast, episode 16, where, as always, I'm joined by the insightful minds of Micah McNeil, Felipe Segura, and Zachary Crilly. And today we have a very special episode as we welcome a very special guest. He's a childhood friend of mine, one of history's greatest late night intoxicated political debaters, and, and expert missile designer at Raytheon from the wonderful city of Tucson, Arizona. Welcome to the pod, Liam. How we doing?
Doing good. I appreciate you guys having me on. I was excited to come on and chop it up with you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, well, first things first, just want to give like a little background of kind of what you do at Raytheon.
Yeah,
We'll
sure.
dive
Um,
into that.
so my role is I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm on a smaller missile program called the Joint Standoff Weapon. My main responsibilities are to sort of create and maintain 3D models and technical drawings for the manufacturer of the actual vehicle. So yeah, if any issues come up or whatever happens out of production or hardware already in the field, me and the team work to address those issues.
That's just so crazy how, I mean, you see like these missile strikes or whatever you see on the news and you're actually designing them. And like in CAD, you can see exactly what features need to be made. Like how does that feel? Like just looking at the design of the rocket and then them actually being used.
Yeah, it's cool. I have buddies at work too that are on probably more well-known programs like the Tomahawk cruise missiles, probably one of the most well-known ones. But you'll see these vehicles used and they'll be in the news and whatnot. And it's cool sort of internally after you can see the discussion about how it performed and what issues came out of it and how they're working to address it. Um, the program I'm on is a little smaller, so you won't be seeing that in the news at all. But yeah, it's cool actually being able to receive feedback from uh the military when they actually use these and actually being able to get in there and open up the missile model and making things happen. So it's been cool.
It's got a
Yeah.
great name too. Joint
Yeah,
Standoff.
yeah, it's cool. I don't really know why they named it that, but it's a pretty sweet name. So
Yeah. But on this podcast we talk about kind of macro trends, startup space, some current events. And I mean, since you're at the behemoth of Raytheon, we were kind of interested in how they view innovation and like how, I guess, with such a big company, can they keep up?
yeah, yeah. So obviously Raytheon makes good products. I think that's why they have such a good relationship with the government. But they're sort of like any other big, massive company where sometimes what would otherwise be sort of you know, a quick process or quick change can sometimes get bogged down in the big bureaucracy of the company. Just personally, I've worked on things that, changing fasteners or even fixing typos in technical drawings where, you know, I can do it in 10 minutes, but sometimes these changes end up taking days or weeks or even months. So I've never worked for a smaller company, so um, I wonder if these smaller companies could find a way to, retain the quality because obviously these approval processes are to maintain a certain level of quality. But if these smaller companies can maintain the quality while also being able to be maybe a little more efficient.
Yeah, we see like Anduril and these other companies getting into the military and defense space. I mean, does Raytheon even really think about them as competitors? Like, if they actually did well, would they just buy them outright or somehow collaborate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of acquisitions obviously in the industry. Even Raytheon not too many years ago merged with a different company. But anyway, yeah, so Raytheon, I don't know about other companies. Raytheon is already in the drone business. I think they've been producing their own drone called Coyote since like 2019. But a company like Anduril is introducing things that, I don't think the industry has seen. Anduril has drones that actually have payloads or bombs on them, and they also use artificial intelligence and all sorts of new things that I don't think the industry has seen, and that I think are probably going to play a bigger role in conflicts moving forward. We've already sort of seen it. There was one attack on Moscow that was employed using a drone, and the Ukrainian government denied it. I suppose it could have been a third party, but I think it just goes to show that that type of hardware is going to take up a bigger space in the industry. And if Anduril can get it right and do it at a cost-efficient and effective level, I think they could be, them and companies like it could be serious players.
And Felipe, do you have a question?
Yeah, that's super interesting. One question that I have is, when you're working on a project, are you also working with other kind of contracting companies that have like done a joint bid with kind of the larger company? Because I know that there's carve outs within the federal government, right, for small businesses, minority owned businesses. So that is something that when someone talks about efficiency or whatnot, like that can get in the way because you have all these different teams working on the same project because you kind of have this bureaucratic overhead or rules and regulations. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just to your second point there, there's a huge push, especially in the past few years, from the DoD and the Secretary of Defense to give contracts to what would be considered sort of non-traditional companies, smaller companies, and companies like Anduril that are doing new things. Me personally, I worked on one effort where it was a joint effort between Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. It's not exactly a small non-traditional company. That can kind of get hairy too, because they'll be in charge of one part of the effort and we'll be in charge of another. And it's sort of hard to communicate requirements and what's going on each end. So I think that can sort of slow things down, but that's just the reality of how the contract was built out. But yeah, I think you'll start to see what would be considered non-traditional companies start to play a bigger role and eventually be part of these missions and production efforts.
I'm curious, Liam, you're a smart young man who has, I'm sure, lots of creative ideas about how to improve and innovate processes at Raytheon. Do you find that there's space for that? Because I imagine being in not only such a big company, but dealing with a product that's so consequential, right? It's not like you guys are shipping a new app to track data. Like, this is, if you mess up a part of the missile, the potential consequences can be devastating. Do you feel like there's room and pathways for innovation in the role and in the firm at large?
Yeah, so pretty much I think of two things, right? So there's space in the manufacturing side to actually build these things more efficiently, and that's not really my expertise, right? There are manufacturing engineers who get really into that stuff. But then the other side of it too is sort of the bureaucratic approval side of things, and it's tough. It's tough to actually get innovation there because you have to be careful about trading quality for efficiency, right? So if you're going to introduce what you think is something that could streamline the process, you have to make sure that you're not leaving anything out or missing anything that could potentially have downstream effects. And you don't want missiles falling out of the sky. That wouldn't be good. But to answer your question, yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvements. And even during my short time here, we've talked about including certain people or not including certain people in certain processes, and whether or not certain people are actually needed and need to get their hands on things. So those are always sort of ongoing conversations that we're having.
Liam, do you think that do you think like sort of the change that you're highlighting, you mentioned the DoD, do you think that has to do something with the incentive changing? And then if so, what do you think some of the foreign implications that we have, what do you think their effect on that sort of incentive changing is?
So when you say incentive changing, do you mean incentive changing for the government to award contracts to different
I'm
folks?
saying on your guys's end on creating more efficient products and
Oh, yeah.
um abilities.
Yeah, I mean, there's always an incentive, right, for the government to award contracts to companies that can bid it for less money. And in order to do something that costs less money, you have to do it more efficiently. And that was something I was actually going to mention too. I'm not sure a lot of people know this, but um, these big companies like Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing, all of them, they actually don't make a lot of money on the sort of newer proprietary new technology programs because it's sort of a war to see who can bid it the lowest. And then the contract goes to them, and they don't actually make a ton of money on those. So, you know, for a company like Raytheon, being able to win those contracts and then actually streamline the production process to actually turn a profit is a massive incentive for them.
So
Um,
I guess if you're paid regardless for it, right? So
yeah.
where's the incentive to create great products if you're paid if the government pays for it regardless?
Well, I mean I guess gets into contract structure, right? I mean
Yeah.
there are certain I'm not an expert on contracts, but I'm sure that there are certain clauses in these contracts that say, you know, you'll get penalized if you don't hit this certain date or don't hit this certain requirement or capability. I'm not sure how the contracts work, but I'm sure that the government's not them. I'm sure. Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, I'm sure that there are things in these contracts that are ensuring that um, Raytheon does have an incentive to cut costs and um, ensure certain capabilities.
Yeah, I'm interested on the other side of that, or maybe that same like kind of line of questioning. Do you feel like there's not an incentive to start from scratch? And I know you haven't been working there like too long, but when you start a project, are you working off of and improving upon someone else's project and kind of knowing what works and then adding the components for the specific use case? And I kind of think of, I just watched like a short video of all these like quote unquote experts talking about like why Elon's Cybertruck was bound to fail or whatever, right? And it's because all of like the way he made the car is completely new and has never been done before. And so like the production moves as fast as the slowest piece, right? So that you can mass produce. So there's like not an incentive to really, really innovate because you don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if you can like speak on that, but
Yeah.
that's something that I
Um,
feel like is an issue, right?
yeah. So for myself, I work on an older, smaller program. So a lot of the stuff that we do is, it's been in the field for, since like the 90s at this point. But, there are programs at Raytheon, not to get into too much detail, but stuff like the hypersonic stuff
Yeah.
where, they're using, you know, previous understanding of how other missiles work into creating the software, control software, hardware, airframe, all that stuff. But when you introduce a completely new idea like hypersonics, most of the stuff in that effort is new, right? And so you have to start from scratch because it's never been done before. Now, I'm not part of that program. I don't have a huge knowledge of it, but yeah, I know that there's certainly incentives to figure that stuff out because um, the contract's going to go to someone. So that stuff's going to get built by somebody at some point. So
For sure. And I wanted to switch gears a bit here, but I mean, Liam, when I was at GW,
hmm
I felt like you guys were getting into political arguments and debates pretty much every night. And Mike, I don't know if it was similar at Georgetown, but I just remember political affairs was like the most common thing talked about, which definitely wasn't the case at my college. But I wanted to bring it to kind of a more political lens and like what just happened with Tucker and Putin and how that's kind of affecting media. But we can all give our thoughts on this. But what do you think that impact will be on media, like the success of that interview, and then just like how is that going to change Fox, for example? Is Fox going to be able to survive because Tucker himself is seeing all that success?
Who are you
Liam?
asking? Liam?
Yeah, sure.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
I think Fox News is dead. I'll start with that.
Dead.
I think their only viewership for the most part is people who still watch cable, and that's
Is
older
your
folks.
dad?
Is my father. Yeah, he accounts for a huge part of it. But anyway, yeah, I think that their viewers are aging, and they might not be here for forever. And I think they're aging out. And yeah, I think alternative media is definitely growing. It's not just Tucker and people on the right. You know, you're seeing like people like Don Lemon too that are moving their platforms mostly to Twitter, X, and YouTube and stuff like that. And they're seeing success. So, I mean, this particular interview is also different because it's just such a big name, Vladimir Putin, while he's in the biggest war in Europe since World War II. Like that's gonna get eyeballs, but I think that he is finding success even without these bigger interviews. And yeah, I think Fox News is dead. So
I think onto that point, I think it was Joe Scarborough, or I don't know who specifically said it, but the way that they characterized the interview, they were like, "Oh, he's just some failed Fox News host who went and interviewed Putin. Like, what a failure!" And it's kind of like crazy. Like Elon Musk retweets every interview he had, I guess, for the first 3 months or whatever, and he's getting, I think it's at least over 20 million views every single interview, more than Fox News, CNN are all getting in a night. Uh, and they just can't accept that premise. So it's bad when they can't even accept the reality of people are moving beyond them, you know?
And I just feel like it's moving so fast that they just don't even know what's going on. Like I know Chamath from All In had a tweet about that, but they're just such a large and old company that they just can't adapt that quickly. And how are they going to? Like I'm just thinking what are some ways that they could kind of incorporate the new type of media, but they're just so used to the old way. But like when Liam, when you said Lemon, what is he doing? Is he just basically copying Tucker and like
he,
interviewing his own guests?
yeah, he's doing the same thing. So Tucker announced that he's bringing his show pretty much exclusively to Twitter. I think he also does have a YouTube channel. But yeah, Don
Mm.
Lemon did the exact same thing a few months later, and he's getting more views than he was getting on CNN. So, which I suppose for him wasn't terribly difficult bar to get over. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. I don't think it's pretty much the reason I brought that up is I don't think it's some like right wing phenomenon that people are going to Twitter. I think it's indicative of a bigger change, and I think it's a good thing. I think cable news can stink sometimes. So
And it,
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's to your point, it is a good thing. I don't think it's a right or left thing, especially with Tucker doing the interview with Pooh. And I feel like it's something that like you feel intrinsically and you feel like it's a good thing. So the fact that we have like sort of these independent journalists doing independent interviews with people is something that we as Americans want. And for them to be doing that is a good thing. I looked at the Putin Carlson interview almost like as a pre Super Bowl for this weekend. because I was very excited for it. I couldn't wait until 6 p.m. I think it was on Thursday that it came out, but it was great because you got to hear the other perspective. Whereas for the last, you know, almost century or better half of a century, it's sort of been whatever you see on the, the cable news or whatever media. So having these different channels of media is something that I find to be super important. And that's sort of the wave and direction that I think the world is going. And that's a net positive thing, to your point.
What did you guys think of the interview? Did it like change your mind at all about the war? Like I kind of felt Putin was stalling for the first 45 minutes or whatever.
I can jump in. I don't want to leave. I don't want to put Liam on a stray, but it was things that we already knew, right? Like Nord Stream. Um, for comparison, it would be, he didn't want NATO to continue to move east. Things that we kind of already knew. The first 30 minutes of it, I was falling asleep, but you found out that Putin's very articulate and he knows his shit. He's sharp,
Starting
unlike,
in 400 AD.
yeah. And I found it super interesting. But if you skip 30 minutes in, he starts to get into some of the stuff that we already knew. And I found that to be very important and really informative just to hear the other side. Because you don't get to hear that for the most part. So I really enjoyed that part of it. He was stalling for sure though. And he is arrogant too. He's super arrogant. His arrogance like bleeds through the screen almost.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to him. He like stayed though as long as Tucker Carlson wanted to interview, which yeah, I mean, I thought he would like put a hard deadline. It's 1 hour, that's it. He's just let the questions come kind of thing. But yeah.
But imagine the value for him. He gets a voice. I forget how many views it has, but he gets a voice to millions.
130 million.
Yeah.
200 million actually.
200?
Yeah.
Yes, and ongoing. Yes.
And
Yeah.
if that
Dude.
moves the needle in the minds of American voters, even marginally, maybe that weakens the support that the U.S. provides to the Ukraine or strengthens his support. That's a huge win for him. So yeah, I'm sure he'd love to talk to 10 hours to the American public
Yeah.
and share his opinions and ideas.
Liam, don't talk. Liam, you can't talk.
I can't talk. Damn. All right. Yeah. I was just gonna say, Micah, to your point earlier, I think that this interview had a better chance of happening with sort of a journalist with his own independent organization. Like, I don't think Putin would have given an interview to a mainstream media group for fear of manipulation or whatever. Right. So I think that's number one. And two, I mean, I don't think you can take. I mean, I'm no historian. I don't know the accuracy of any of his claims in the first half hour. You certainly can't take it at face value. So I can't really speak to that. But one thing that I did find interesting was his, during part of the interview, he invoked the war as some sort of war on Nazism. And I just thought that was interesting because I have a feeling that, defeating Nazism is probably not on his short list of actual goals in this war. But I think the reason that he brought it up is because he knows that neo-Nazism and Nazism is sort of the embodiment of evil in the West. And it's the first thing that we think of when we think of evil things. So to frame his conflict as a war on Nazism, I think was, to what Zach was saying, trying to peddle favor from the West and try to get folks on his side. So I thought that was sort of a manipulative tactic, and I don't really think it's all that true.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there are objectively deplorable groups of Nazism in Western parts of Ukraine. Correct.
Big time. Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely. I just was of the opinion, and that's obviously true, and that's not good, obviously, but I don't think that defeating Nazism is truly the goal of, or even on the short list of goals for this war for Putin. I think it's more of a land grab to, show his power, all that stuff. But I don't think that that's actually one of his goals. But I thought it was smart to invoke it just to,
it's a good PR move
to get the West on his side more. Yeah, I thought it was
He's a KGB guy. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
no, and to your point, I think it's just one of those things. It's like there's that one friend that you can wind up if you say something, and then he gets like all flustered and starts like getting super angry, and it's just that one sentence. I think to your point, when he said that, I don't know if you guys saw this a couple months back, the Canadian Parliament
Mhm.
like all got up and clapped for some guy who fought the Russians in the 40s, who was like a Ukrainian hero because he was fighting for the Nazis. And so like it was just a super embarrassing, like didn't make sense. But yeah, to your point, it's like a trap kind of phrase that
Yeah.
like you know that the other side is gonna like do something super stupid to like prove your point when it's like really not true, you
Yeah,
know?
because who wants to stand by that? Nobody
Yeah.
wants to stand by Nazism,
And
the
that's
losing
something
proposition.
only Justin Trudeau could screw up that bad. It was awful. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's awful, but I mean, I don't think we actually think the Canadians, support Nazism, as a policy, uh, you know, term. But anyway, yeah, I think that he was invoking it just to curry some favor. I don't think he actually believes that there is a huge Nazi problem in the West. And it's obviously a problem in Ukraine, but I don't think it's one of his big strategic goals.
Yeah, and there's to think about that number, 200 million. That's like two-thirds of the American population, and it just shows that have people are craving agendaless media,
Mm-hmm. Great
like
point, Gav.
podcast, long form content, and it's just I want to see where it goes. I
Well,
mean, in the presidential race, like I wonder if that would benefit both candidates. I mean, both of them have kind of done that in the past. Like Trump has gone on long form podcasts. But imagine if Biden did that and like nothing was planned and you could ask anything, what would happen? I bet he would just absolutely bomb it.
To go to our predictions, I'm making an iteration to my prediction. I don't even think Biden is going to run for president come October. I don't know if you guys have been on the news cycle recently, but I don't think he's making it to the finish line. My boy Vivek has been on this for months. Sorry to just go on this quick tangent, but I don't even think Biden's going to run for president.
then
I
I
mean,
don't think he
I mean,
can.
he
what will the
shouldn't.
Democratic Party do then?
Exactly. They're at a very tough point. I don't know what
Gavin
they do.
Newsom. Gavin Newsom. I'm calling it.
But every day that goes by that they aren't holding him up as the candidate it becomes a harder and harder hill for them to fight on.
No, they go to the convention. It gets the Democratic convention. He steps down for the good of the country, whatever. The only problem is Kamala Harris or Kamala, whatever. If I because I know that some people pronounce it wrong. Apologies out there if anyone cares about it. But the problem is if she steps up, she's more unpopular than Biden. So they have an issue. You're right. But if they can get Gavin Newsom, I think they will.
But
Yeah,
Zach, you're right. Every day that passes is just another day of lost popularity contest. Then it's just less eyeballs on whoever could be the candidate.
They at the midterms or whatever, I think that's what they call them. You remember there was that there's going to be a red wave in October. I guarantee there's going to be a red wave. It just the Democrats have just sort of put themselves in between a rock and a hard place, and they have no relative option regardless of which way they go. I
But
think.
I think that their logic, if I were to try to guess their logic, because it seems to me that it's illogical to pretend to run a candidate that you don't actually have the intention of running, especially this close to the election. For whatever reason, but maybe their rationale is, hey, we know that X% of the country just despises Trump, right? And it's looking like he's going to be the nominee. It doesn't even matter who we put as his opponent because like people just don't dislike Trump so much. so Felipe, you're saying Newsom, maybe that's what they're thinking is like, hey, we don't even really have to try if we just put up an alternative to Trump that's this young guy who can speak well and has some sort of a political lineage.
That's a
We
theory.
would,
I'm not going to
yeah.
say that's going to happen. I mean, I think it's definitely like most likely it's Biden, but like I think overall it's going to be a low turnout election. I do think not a lot of people are going to show up to vote.
That's true, but dude, I don't know if you guys have been just on. I've just been on Twitter and just the New York Times. Well, I don't read the New York Times, but there's just been so many op-eds and editorials. We'll put in the show notes, but I don't think Biden's gonna run. I really don't think so. Like I think they're ready. Even Hillary Clinton came out and was like, yeah, his competency is definitely in question. I mean, who's a bigger figurehead than that saying that? I don't think the Democrats have an option. I think Michelle Obama is as viable as Gavin Newsom to run. I don't know. I don't think the Democrats have any direction on where they want to go. And I feel bad because I'm someone who would probably lean more Democratic. And I just have, that's why I'm RFK, but I just don't know.
But they have to. I mean, there's people that are sitting down the road whose full-time job all day, every day is to be a Democratic strategist. Like there
Right.
has to be some plan. It's
Yeah,
just
I
not
hope so.
clear what it is.
I was just gonna mention I don't think Biden is gonna drop out of the race just because I think Biden's wanted to be the president for decades, and now that he has this power, I don't think he's gonna want to give it up. So I'm not sure, you know, I don't know how much power the DNC has over that. You know, apart from him dropping dead, I think this guy is gonna run. And there's a big enough contingency of people in the country that just hate Donald Trump enough to where they would vote for a house plant, and it doesn't matter who the guy is.
It's insane
So
we got to that point.
yeah, so I don't know. I think that I think the Democrats keep him up there because I don't think he's going to be willing to relinquish power, and they'll do their best to prosecute Trump, put him in an orange jumpsuit, and hopefully for them, hopefully not have folks vote for him because they
Which
see him
is
as a
an
criminal.
insane paradigm. Which is an
So
insane paradigm. It's gotten to the point where the only campaign play for the Democrats is just anti-Trump.
yeah,
Isn't
but I
that
mean
crazy, right?
that's
Yeah.
actually that's what it is. It's not. I mean, you can only be pro Biden so far. I mean,
It's
doesn't
interesting.
totally have it together. So
It's interesting. I was thinking about Liam when you're talking about innovation within Raytheon, and you said multiple times quality cannot be compromised, cannot be sacrificed. And I was wondering if there's a direct trade-off between innovation and quality. And then we talked about media, and we see, okay, this case of Tucker Carlson who broke off and is producing the same, if not higher quality product than the traditional media companies can. So that made me think, oh, there's not a correlation or a disconnect between quality and innovation. And then you have politics where it's like there's not even a room for like if there's it doesn't even matter the quality because there's such a disconnect between the way that the system is set up and the quality of the ideas and the performance that people are doing that it's just so unfortunate that we all can sit here and agree that it's going to be a low turnout year that people are disengaged with the idea of it being Trump Biden 2.0. I struggle to think of people that I know personally that resonate with either of those two people as strong leaders who they want to lead the country. And that's a shame. And I don't like to just point out problems. I'd love to offer a solution, but it's sad that that's where we are again today. What is a solution for that? Is it strong young candidates that speak the minds and can win over the hearts of the country?
yeah, I was just gonna, to your point, Zach. I think that this particular election is unique in that someone like Ron DeSantis, he was super popular. Hate him or love him, he was super effective as governor in Florida. And so he quickly became a pretty popular politician. And I think in any other election year, he would have been far and away the number one candidate. But just so happens that we have Donald Trump, who's this sort of once in a lifetime political talent, love him or hate him. And he's running as a non-consecutive second term sort of incumbent like candidate. So I think in a normal election cycle, Ron DeSantis would have introduced a new, younger sort of style of conservatism and sort of just politics in general to the election cycle, but didn't work out for him this time around because it's a special election cycle because of the things I just said about Donald Trump. So I'd like to think that maybe after this election, the next one, maybe we start to see some more normal folks, or at least some folks that aren't like senile, and maybe we can get back to some sort of sense of normalcy.
And I do think it's trending towards that though. And everything is going towards long form content, like the agendaless media and things like that. So it just, I think, is going to take time. And like you said, these candidates are pretty unique and charged with emotion, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Micah just commented in the chat, Vivek. Like Vivek is on Shorts, he's on TikTok, he's on all of these content platforms, like cutting up little comments that he's making. And I feel like people resonated with that. I just don't think he created that soon enough to have that huge effect, like outlasting effect.
It was just an uphill battle. I mean, you have an Indian American, I don't know his religious background, trying to run as a Republican. I mean, it's going to be an uphill climb. But I think that's where the future is. And another prediction, I think Vivek is going to be Trump's VP. I'm saying it now, and I can't wait. I love Vivek. I really love him. I think what he's trying to do, and to Liam's point about where the future goes, I think the big dogs going forward, at least on the right, I think Nikki Haley, they're gonna forget about her after this. But I think in 2028, it's gonna be Vivek, Tim Scott, DeSantis, and now it's gonna be on the right. On the left again, I don't even know. I don't even want to talk about the left. I'll just stop there.
On the left, beware Gavin Newsom. I watched an interview of him on Bill Maher. He is really articulate. Like
he's just really handsome and articulate, but he's a
politician.
fraud.
He's
I get it.
I think he's really smart.
But he's
He
good.
is.
Yeah,
He is. He is really
knows
good.
what he's saying and why he's saying it. He knows who he's appealing to. So I think he's going to be a formidable opponent.
He is, but
I
like,
shouldn't
what's
say
his resume? Like, I used to really like Gavin
terrible.
Newsom, but his resume is terrible.
He's
If we're being
there,
if we're being
Francisco.
honestly,
And then governor. Yeah.
at least DeSantis, like, his track record is like really good. At least with Newsom, I
Well,
don't.
depends on
Cal-
who you ask. I mean,
Did you-
Right.
Did you
ask
guys
a
see when Xi
Democrat in Florida?
Jinping when Xi Jinping went to San Francisco and the reporter asked Xi Jinping, the premier of China, came to San Francisco, and they said like that, like the streets were clean. Somehow the homeless people found an alternative place to go. The needles were off the street.
In like a
the
week.
fecal
In like a
matter was off
week.
the
This
street.
was unbelievable, Zach. I did hear about
And
this.
So
Unreal.
they're doing a press conference, and Gavin Newsom is taking questions, and a reporter says, what do you say to the people that claim that the only reason that San Francisco got cleaned up is because Xi Jinping comes to town? And he was like, yeah,
that
that
did
is the
happen.
reason.
Wait, even
that
like
was-
I think it was
That
like
was the entire answer. He was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, what do
And
you
then-
want? President of China's coming. Got to clean up.
and then like a
I
week
I
ago.
appreciate the honesty.
And then the
lo-
logical extension of that is, hey, why don't we keep doing that even when he leaves, right?
Even
that would make
even
too much sense.
the more recent one, he went to CVS and he like saw someone like steal like some stuff, right? And then he's like talking to like the councils and the mayor, and like the audio came out on this, and he's like, why do I have to go pay for it, but someone else can steal it? And it's like, this is the governor saying this. This is the governor not taking accountability for people stealing. It was crazy because one of my best friends lives in San Francisco, and he's like, yeah, that's actually asinine that like the governor isn't taking accountability for the looting and robbing of CVS's. He's like just
Yeah.
wiped his hands like fucking Pontius Pilate or some shit. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
gets me excited.
Newsom obviously can get criticized for all sorts of things from the right, but why I think he's going to be so popular is because people on the left care a lot about a lot of the social issues, having a progressive tax bracket where they can redistribute money. I mean, there are all sorts of policies that people on the left look for and see in Gavin Newsom. And then when you pair that with a savvy talker, a good-looking gentleman, I think he could be a
It's a higher quality product than
serious force to be. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you're right.
better than a Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. It's someone who can actually articulate these ideas and do it in an appealing way, which is something you haven't seen much of from at least prominent Democratic politicians, I think.
Well, even more so though, I think what's really important is speaking from emotion. And I think that that was actually one of the issues of DeSantis. Like, he was very logical and fact driven. And when they had that debate, literally Newsom and DeSantis, one state that was growing like crazy, one state that was losing all their people to that state, it kind of felt like Newsom was winning that debate. And it's
Yeah,
just because when you're such a good speaker and you can talk to emotion, a lot of times people appeal more to emotion than like pure logic or facts. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, Liam, we just had our predictions of 2024. So that's your big political winner. So Gavin Newsom, I hope he holds the name of the
Yep.
Gavin name in a high honor.
Yep.
But we just want to thank you, Liam, for coming on the
Yeah,
pod. It was a
course.
pleasure.
Yep.
And to all our listeners, hope you enjoyed and have a great rest of your weekend and enjoy the Super Bowl. But thanks, Liam.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Have a good